nothing wrong with being on a track that helps you meet your goals, but I think that if we go back to Gatto, who talks about genius being as common as dirt, that we all are able to learn a lot, and if teachers set the bar high, students will reach it, right?
Right.
I actually included some quotations from Mike Rose that really talk about education within the concept of our society and why we have education and the politics of it. One of these I think is kind of interesting, and I'd like to ask you your thoughts about it. If you have any, and it's okay, I don't want to put you on the spot. But this last one here, it says, in higher education, there is a politically loaded distinction between pure and applied study. So pure study, where you're studying something just because it's interesting, and then studying something, the applied study is to study something because it is something that you're going to use, right? So he says pure study is elevated because it putatively involves the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake. Mathematics and literature are good examples. Applied study, such as engineering, medicine, and education, because it is situated in human affairs, is somehow tainted, is less, well, pure. What a bewildering distinction, I would have thought. What a silly, bloodless dichotomy. So he's saying that we think that just studying something to study it is better. And it seems kind of silly, right?
Right.
So,
yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, from what I think is, like, on my own experience, I think that we should always be studying and learning something different. And while I took some adult classes at the beginning of my studying, and I soon find out that learning English is not just to learn each word or the meaning, but we also need to learn something else. So I decided to start taking some college classes and learn something while I was learning English also. So I think for me, that is important to learn something and not just to learn a language.
Right, that you're going to use it. And
right. Something I'm going to use, right.
And I think what he suggests here too, if we look into it further, is that the people who learn things, like a pure study, they tend to have the privilege, the economic privilege, to be able to just learn something for the sake of learning something. And I think that I would argue that that's a mistake. Not that there are not people who want to do that, and that's okay, but that we look at pure study as something for the privileged, and applied study is for people who are the working class, less economically stable, right?
Right.
Because who has the time to learn something just for the sake of it, right?
Right.
I'm not talking about like a hobby. I'm talking about something that you're going to do for. So, do you know? I'm just kind of transitioning a little bit. Do you know which texts that you want to use for your writing project yet?
I think I'm gonna go with Malcolm X reading.
Okay.
That's something that really, it's I don't know if you read my second blog yesterday. I just posted yesterday. I got confused and I thought it was for Wednesday, and it actually was for Monday.
You're okay. You're set.
Yeah.
You're okay. That's all right.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's I can use some of my personal experience on that. So I think I can develop my idea more than any other one. Like the first one is also interesting, but the last one where I have to do the summary is giving me a little bit more of an issue.
Okay.
It's hard to understand what really is trying to say. I know it is.
Right.
It's talking about the schools and how different they can be according to the demographic.
Right. Yeah, and it is interesting. Kozel is a little bit more difficult to read. That
Right.
is for sure. He's one that
Yeah.
you read maybe a page or two at a time, and then you have to go back and
Yeah, I've been reading a lot on that. I have to go back and forth and try to understand his point.
right.
And also, I also have a question on that. We have to do the summary, and you say that three different kind of summary, right?
Yes. In fact, let's move to that. Let me get there on the page. I want to open us up here to. I'm going to go to the modules, and I have it open in student view. And so let's take a look here. We're in project 2, and we're going to be opening up the thinking about summary assignment. And it has 3 things. One is looking at the reading through the thinking about summary. You're going to write each type, and then you're going to share your summaries, right?
Right.
So, Efrain, I don't know where you are in this group. Let's see. You're in Kozel. Okay, so you have the harder one, which is actually not a bad thing because it just means, you know, you'll focus in on it a little bit more. So let me open up this thinking about summary handout.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to point out that I'm really glad that you mentioned that you want to use Malcolm X, you know, because you connect to his experience and you feel like you have things to say.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to, that Kozel was a little bit more difficult. And so summary writing is actually a really important skill to be able to do because the act of writing a summary means that you understand what the text is about. And so going back and writing a careful summary. And it doesn't mean you're going to do that every single time for every single set text, but it's a good thing to review. And so you were talking, before I present this here, why don't you ask me your question?
Okay, about that. It is getting like even though I go and read again and again and again, it's kind of hard to understand his point. I know he's talking about the difference on how schools will be so different depending on they're situated on a low income
Yes.
section or a higher one, and he's talking about the how students can feel the difference. And but then at the end, when he is talking about the high school students and how it is harder for them to express or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how I wish that it can help me a little bit to understand that part.
Okay. All right. There's a couple of things going on. The first thing is you actually understand this more than you think you do.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, you do, and that there is a difference between how schools are set up for those who are economically privileged versus others. That those who tend to be economically privileged the schools are set up so that students learn how to be leaders, right? Economic leaders in business, political leaders, and that sort of thing. And that schools with less economic means, that the goal is to have them become good workers. So they're not in charge. They will be working for those who have the economics. But there's
Oh, is that why she puts the example of the teacher where she talks about the way she trains her dogs, that they're being trained to do something, to follow orders only?
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, okay.
Absolutely. And so that's one concept, but then there's also the concept of, or the idea that if you have been trained to be a particular way for so many years in school, that by the time you get to high school, unless you are being engaged, you become indifferent because it's boring and it's not helping you personally to move towards your goals. And it's very kind of similar to, it connects with Gatto, who talks about that some of the lessons that we learn are to kind of quiet down what's interesting to us, so that, you know, learning should be really engaging and interesting instead of, and learner centered instead of trying to get through content, right?
Okay.
So I think you've done a better job than you think. I also think that you're going to have an opportunity to read other people's summaries, those people who received the assignment of looking at causal. I think you'll be able to look at theirs and compare. And one of the things that made me interested in the 3 different types of summary that I created here is that last summer I attended a workshop, and we were all sitting together in different groups, and we were given a reading, and our job was to summarize the reading, and then we were going to share the summary, and then we had a few other things to do. And I wrote a long summary. There was another person who wrote a super short summary, like she narrowed it down to a sentence or two. And then there was somebody who wrote a summary that was in between. And what I noticed is that all 3 were correct, right? But there's value in doing different types of summary for different reasons. So, for example, you know, with the causal article, that is difficult to write. The 1 page, you have to make the decisions of what's important, what details to include, and you might include a quotation or 2. You're kind of digging in a little bit deeper. But again, the summary is not your opinion about what it means. It is you restating what he has said in your own words in a more narrow fashion. And then if you're doing the 1 page, right? So you have to think about what's important to include and what should be taken out. And so I have, you know, some instructions here about, with a suggestion of a topic sentence, and then noting that the reader's not read the book or article and don't evaluate. In your essay, you will be evaluating, but not here.
Right.
And then, but when we get to the 6-sentence summary, you'll keep that very first sentence, but then you have to reread and decide what are the most important claims and ideas that, you know, if you had to narrow it down further. And then with the 6-word summary is you are narrowing it down even further. And some students choose to write an actual sentence, and some students decide to just take concepts, individual words out. And I think that it's incredibly important because you do need to understand the text that you're reading. And what will happen is that you are able to use these particular details from the text as evidence later on when you write your essay.
Right.
So you can also, the one reason why I'm having you turn it into a discussion forum, you will also be able to take a look at other people who've who've read Malcolm X. So you want to use Malcolm X. So you can do that, and you can take a look at their summaries and see if they're on, on the same wavelength as you.
Right. Okay.
So good job, Ephraim. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good job.
I was kind of worried right now. I haven't met the last two meetings, and today I say I have to do it.
Well, I'm glad you're here because it's better when there are more students. But I also know that this is kind of with the rain and everything, that the roads might be a little bit.
Right. I was rushing. I just came running into my room and tried to do it, and yeah, it works. It worked good.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so
for the essay, do we have to use only one reading, or can we use more than one?
I'm wanting you to use two. Wanting you to use two. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm wanting you to think about an obstacle. So, for example, if you're using Malcolm X, and that could be your main article. Main text, right? And you're talking about his particular struggle with reading and as an obstacle and what he tends to do. And then you can use causal to support the fact that Malcolm X came from a low economic status, so, and he also was African American at a time during segregation where education was not the same at all. Right? So you can use causal to support your reading of Malcolm X. Yeah.
Okay.
That would be my suggestion.
Yeah.
But you could do it however you want.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you're going to share your some summaries in our Thinking About Summary discussion forum. So.
Right. Yeah. And yeah. Okay.
All right. So the next item on our agenda is to look at our roadmap. And I wanted to look at the essay a little bit further because the key questions are: what is an obstacle that attempts to prevent equity in education, right? And we just talked about one, and you brought one up with Malcolm X and using causal to support that. And then the next question is, how can people prevail against it? So that becomes the place where you need to be thinking about what is the solution to trying to figure out how to change things so that this is not the status quo, right?
Right.
And then, so again, for going through the problem is that many of the authors have had to overcome challenges, right? And so you can also look at, why they made the choices they did. What were they hoping to achieve? So we look at Malcolm X, and his story is one of triumph, right? Because he's able to move around, go over the obstacle, right?
Yeah, and he's on his case, what he wanted to accomplish was to get involved and work on the human right.
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 Yeah, he was definitely into civil rights. Absolutely.
Right.
So
that was his main idea of what he wanted, why he wanted to accomplish that, and be able to read and express his ideas and work towards that.
Right. And so again, I'm just reading a little bit here about your writing project should clearly explain what one of these hurdles is and share one or more solutions to it.
Okay.
And then the audience, it's not just, it's a very similar audience as the last paper. It's your peers who are in school, and it's your teachers, not just me, but teachers in general. Like, what do we need to do differently so that we can be meeting the needs of our students, right?
Right.
Because the purpose is we're all vested in education, because, you know, people come to school, they want to be prepared for their own careers. They may have something that they want to be able to do that they can't without education. And teachers want to be able to be helpful in that. So I'm looking forward to reading your paper. So
Okay. Yeah, I'll do my best this time.
I think you did your best last time. And
I did, but I promise to do better this time.
well, I hope each time, you know, you learn a little bit more.
Right. And that's the idea. That's why I have grown up kids that they are on college already, and they laugh at me because I'm taking this class, and when they see all the work that you make us do, they say that they will never take you as a teacher.
And tell them they're missing out.
I know. I told them that they told me to drop it. I say no. I'm gonna learn. I want to learn, and I'm gonna do it.
Yes.
I'm glad I'm taking your class, and I'm glad I'm learning a lot.
Yes. And you know, there's a place here to try, and there's a safe place for you to fail. You know, and what I mean by fail is that you tried to do something and you didn't quite hit the mark. And so there's an opportunity for you to try again. And I build that into our course because I think it's really important. So, yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here, Ephraim, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad too. I think I'm getting a lot out of this class.
I'm so glad to hear that. Super happy. Okay, so whenever if you get to a place where you forget why you're doing what you're doing, every once in a while, I was a student, and I start writing my paper, and I get deep into this one thing I wanted to write, and then I would wonder what is that prompt again? And so always going back to the key question helps to rein you in, you know, to get you to think about what it is you want to do. All right, so the last thing I wanted to talk about is Flipgrid. I didn't put it on the agenda, but I decided to because I had a student emailing me about it. And so I wanted to chat about that. And I want to showcase here on my phone. Let me see, is that right? Let me see if you can see it. I don't know if you can, but right there I have the little Flipgrid app.
Okay.
That I have downloaded. Okay. And if we go to the modules, it requires you not to click out of Canvas, but it requires you to go onto your app, which is why I had you do it during the orientation week. And so we have a code here and a password. And so if I open up my Flipgrid, I have Flipgrid. I already have some of my recents up there, but there's a place right there where it says to enter a code. So if you enter this code 749962, you can get to the proper Flipgrid.
Okay.
And then it requires you to have a password. And I just used it today. So it's not making me put the password in again, but I actually had to put in the password, which is capital S and then student 1. And every time there's a Flipgrid, it takes a little bit of thought, but it really doesn't take a lot of time to do it. And there's a little prompt here where it says each of the authors we have read in our micro theme learning power has highlighted problems and solutions Choose one problem and think about an alternative solution that you might choose if you were in a similar situation. So I think you have something there, Ephraim, because you were talking about earlier Malcolm X and how you really felt like you could dig into your own background and learn, you know, share in your essay. And so if we go on to the, let me see if I move this down. There's a little green plus sign that if I hit the plus, I can add a video. I can listen to a video and I can add a video. And I hit the plus and there's a red, let's do this. And there's a little red dot down there. Okay. And I can hit that and say, okay, so one issue that I have that, you know, from the reading is that Kozel mentions that there are inequities based on economics in the classroom. And so when I started teaching, I taught at Crenshaw High School, where I really worked to create learning experiences where students would have to take leadership so that it wouldn't be that they were stuck in one place. I wanted to challenge them to think. And one thing that I had students do is I taught second language learners who finished with ESL, but they were still learning English. You know, they were still working on it. And so I did a speech and debate unit. And in that unit, I had them actually go out and give speeches for things at the school, and several of my students ended up being successful with that, and it gave them confidence to do what they needed to do. Thank you. So I had to stop that because I was almost done with my minute and 30 seconds. It only takes you a minute and a half to speak. And so there's a little green arrow at the bottom here where I hit next and say, and you can hear me. So one issue that I'm going to go to next. I snap a little selfie, and then I hit the green arrow again, and I put my first name, my last name, and my email so that if people respond, I can know about it and check back on it. And so it's an opportunity for me to be able to share my ideas, and it's also a way for you to be able to listen to others. And it says you did it. So I'm going to return to the topic, and you'll see 2 videos with me there. And you can listen to a video and respond to it, which is a way for you to be able to meet your peers in a very quick yet thoughtful manner.
Okay.
So it's actually very, very easy. It's just, if you haven't done it before, you might wonder what you need to be doing, which is why I wanted to include this as part of the video, because I will probably save this little piece of the video and upload it for students who need it as well. So.
Okay.
So I don't know. No, I do know that you did not do your Flipgrid yet, but I will, again, just want to showcase that you need to go to the code and then go to use the password. And then you're able to respond and then go back and respond to 1 or 2 of your peers.
Okay. So. Yeah, I'll try that and see how it works. And
yeah, and if you have a problem with it, then you can email me and we can try this again. We can try to talk through it again. I've done this in the last several classes that I've taught, and I find that once you get past the fear, just like with, you know, doing Zoom, you know, at first you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could do this. And then once you do it, you go, oh, it's not that big a deal. Not a big deal. So anyway, I am so glad you were with me today, Ephraim. And are there any other questions or thoughts?
No. I was just worried about the summary for today, and you gave me a lot of help with that. So I think I'll do good. And
you'll be set for the next couple days. I will have the next, or I believe the last Zoom meeting is going to be this Friday. I'm going to change the time slightly, and I will let students know about that probably
Okay.
today. So,
Okay.
all right. Well, thank you so much.